industrialization is a shift from human labor to mechanical labor resulting in mass production. The very first use of industrialization is in textiles. Very shortly after that, we're going to see it in mining, and there's kind of a combination of both of these guys. Inventions are never completely isolated, but with that, of course, we're going to eventually get railroads. Before we get railroads, we're going to get canals, but they start with textiles. The bottom line is factories. That's what defines industrialization. Factories. The first factories happened in 1790s in England. Okay, and what they did is they used water wheel technology. When we say a water-powered, this does not mean that they have this great big tub of water and it pushes the water with pneumatics. It's kind of cool, but no, that's not what it means. Water power means that you have a water wheel. We have a water power, had one right here in Richmond Center. That mill pond was from the mill, so the water wheel is on the river, right? And so the river is very powerful, pushing that wheel. And so that means you put a lot of pressure on that wheel. And I don't know how many of you guys deal with engines or whatnot, but this wheel just has a camshaft. What does a camshaft do? That's pretty important.
It changes circular motion.
That's exactly what it does. So this is going in a circle, and so you have some long rod or something here, and every time before that knob is there, when you're on the smooth part, it's down. Every time the knob pops up, you suddenly moved it upwards, right? Boom, boom, boom. So this circular motion is now up and down motion. Well, depending on where you put your rod, you can have up and down, you can have side to side, so that means that you can have saws, right? You can have bellows, you can have great big weights of stamping, pressing. If on the very end of this, you've got a bunch of gears set up, boom, 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 and boom, 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 then you can have twisting motion there. What is, when I say mill pond, what is that most often used for? Grain mill. Yeah, grain mill. Okay, two great big giant millstones. Now the funny thing is that this mill pond wasn't a grain mill. What was this mill? Saw. So it was a blade, and so they just hooked it up. It was based off the water wheel, so lots of belts and everything like this. This is a simplified version. This is European 1100s. So a water power. At the beginning, it's doing things like mills and saws and whatnot. But then it gets bigger, and somebody creates a water-powered spinner. You guys have heard every fairy tale there is, from Hans Christian Andersen and whatnot. What does the pretty girl always learn how to do? She's always spinning, right? And if she's amazing, she can spin straw into gold, right? I mean, you want to marry her instantly, because she can spin like every day. Well, the truth of the matter is, you look at this metaphorically, of course, is that how do you get your cloth? How do you get your thread? It's called cottage industry. Cottage industry. We use this word today to mean something like a very small, local, handmade type of industry. Technically, cottage industry, things that are built in the cottage. And it is the characteristics handmade, and I think we would use this today, and one at a time, right? Not mass produced. Handmade, one at a time. All of your cloth prior to 1700s was handmade, one at a time. You're sitting around the hearth, the guy's been doing whatever, and the women folk are spinning. Spin, spin, spin. Once they've got their cloth, their thread, what do? They take the thread and then they do the loom. Well, we invent a spinner so you can just dump the wool into one end, and then it turns into thread on the other end. Well, if you can invent this in 1788, what must you invent in 1790? The water-powered loom. And they do, 2 years later, same guy. So what you've got is a factory where you dump wool in on one end and it comes out cloth on the other. This didn't come out because Hargreaves just said, hey, I have a brilliant idea. Necessity is the mother of invention, right? And just to let you know, if we look at Europe, and I'll do this one more time, here's England, Ireland, here's France, other people, okay. Belgium is that little spot up here. We didn't used to call it Belgium, we called it Flanders. And at one point, there's a strong connection. They just have sheep up the gazoo, wool from Flanders. So much of this. England had certainly a renewed relationship with Flanders, and so you got a ton of wool coming into England. Well, how does that wool get processed? It's got to be processed by hand. Now, it's a cottage industry, so the wool comes to the dock, you go down to the dock, you get a bunch of wool, you bring it back in, and you spin. And if you're really good at it, what can you do? Well, you can sell the thread to other people that specialize in the looms. Now, really, this is all happening while it's also local. You have your own sheep in the backyard. You have your own looms, your own spinners, right? The point is you can create a marketplace. I'm mentioning this because one of the things that your textbooks don't emphasize enough is that cottage industry is what rules the world. We talk about China. And when we talked about China, we were talking about some of Chinese beautiful artworks, particularly their ceramics. You know, when you pull out your fine ceramic dishes, what do we call it? China. That's because they became known for that. Not factories. All of those pieces, one at a time. It doesn't mean that you don't have some very skilled houses where people are making these all the time. They're all one at a time, by hand. They can still be kind of like a business where they're making them, but it's all one at a time. What we get when we have the textiles is that it's mass produced, resulting in mass production. The machine is doing it, not the people. Now I'm going to take one step further. Why do we include Enlightenment when we talk about industrialization? Why didn't Rome have industrialization, even though they had some amazing technology? Slave labor. Slave labor. So as people become more aware of their individual rights of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, as people begin to live more in urban settings, which means you have more money, this is going to help to promote the industrialization. If you're getting paid, what do we do with that money? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Remember, John Locke didn't use the word pursuit of happiness. He used the word the right to private property. You have free money. What do you get to do? Whatever you want to do. That's the whole concept then of liberty. Do you think industrialization quashes the Enlightenment or accelerates the Enlightenment? Okay. How does this deal with the Middle East? Well, that's a great question.